Good morning. Good morning to Durham City and Durham County. Welcome to the
Morning.
City and County Committee meeting here on Tuesday, February 8th, 2022. I am so glad to see everyone on Zoom this morning, all in our places with our bright shining faces. And we're so happy to see our chair of our county commissioners this morning. This is my first time presiding. So I'm honored to be here with Chair Brenda Howerton and also many of her colleagues and many of my colleagues as well. So at this time, I am going to ask my teacher, our clerk, who teaches me all things about presiding over meetings, our city clerk, Diana Schreiber, who texted me last night and woke me up this morning on how to get this done. So thank you. I really appreciate her. She's been doing an excellent job, and I hope you all will notice that as I try to preside today for the first time. If you will call our roll for us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Brenda Howerton, Chair of the Durham County Commissioners.
Here.
Vice Chair Wendy Jacobs.
Here.
Commissioner Anita Alam.
Here.
And Commissioner Nimashina Burns. She's the alternate.
Here, and we're going to do that with a long I, Nimashina.
Oh, thank you, Nimashina. And then we'll go to the city. Mayor Elaine ONeill.
Good morning here.
Councilmember Jillian Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Deidreana Freeman.
Present.
And Councilmember Charlie Reese, he is also alternate. And he's not here today. And then we have the interim county manager, Claudia Hager.
Here.
And city manager, Wanda Page. And thank you very much. That's the roll call.
Thank you so much. We're going to move right into our business for today. And the first order of business is the approval of our joint city and county meeting minutes.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, it has been moved and properly seconded. I think our chair of our county commissioners made that motion, seconded by Councilwoman Deidreana Freeman. Are we now ready for our vote this morning?
Chair Howerton.
Aye.
Vice Chair Jacobs.
Aye.
Commissioner Alam.
Aye.
Mayor ONeill.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman.
Aye.
Thank you.
And we have approved our minutes unanimously. And we will now move to our second item this morning. We will talk with the Durham Cultural Advisory Board, CAB. There is a funding request. We have presenters Angela Lee, who is the chair of the Cultural Advisory Board, Yvonne Coleman, and Katy Clune, who are CAB minutes. And I will now turn this over to our presenters. Welcome this morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor ONeill. And thank you all for having us this morning. Chair Howerton, Manager Hager, members of the Joint Committee. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. I am, as Mayor ONeill said, I'm Angela Lee, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Yvonne Coleman and Katy Clune, members of the Durham Cultural Advisory Board. And we are here to request a joint allocation of funding, $300,000 for a new cultural, I'll say roadmap, since rather than master plan. And Yvonne is going to share more of our proposal, but I wanted to just indicate that one, the original plan was created in 2004, and it no longer serves our growing population and the needs of the cultural arts and humanities sector. Since 2000, for example, the population of Durham County has grown nearly 44%. So we are here today to respectfully request funding of $300,000 to be provided jointly and to be funded in 2023. And with that, I will turn it over to Yvonne Coleman. Thank you.
Actually, I think we go to Katy first, and we do have a PowerPoint if that could be brought up.
Morning, everybody. It looks like I can actually share. Well, okay. So let's advance to slide 3, please. Or page 3. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Mayor ONeill and committee members and my fellow DCAT board members, Angela and Yvonne, for the opportunity to speak today. Some of this will sound familiar to you, but we just want to frame our work to lead into discussion. And I believe everyone received our white paper, but essentially last year, the Durham Cultural Advisory Board organized to prioritize advocacy to fund a new cultural master plan or roadmap for Durham. And the way we began this work was actually hosting some community research. You know, as volunteer members, we sought to partner with the Durham Arts Council and included 5 questions on their COVID impact survey that they distributed to Durham's art organizations and individual artists that have previously received support from them in December 2020. And we hosted meetings with 3 cross-representative groups from the sector to better understand what people who work as creatives in Durham are facing today. And one of the most striking things we found is there up top in bold that only 77% of the people that responded to that Durham Arts Council survey on behalf of their organizations were confident that they would be inexistent in 5 years. And 5% said it was a toss-up. Next page, please. So why is this important now? Of course, you know, that the pandemic and the shutdown made our cultural ecosystem even more fragile. But beforehand, I think you'll remember that a group of independent artists actually self-organized and lobbied Durham City Council for funding in 2019. So this need was present before COVID, given Durham's vast changes since 2004, and it is only more necessary now. And something that we found in review of city and county planning documents is that investment in arts and culture planning could actually help the city and county achieve some of their already stated goals in economic development and in racial equity. Next slide, please. And what is cultural planning? Something that we really want to emphasize is our interest and desire and goal to really engage the Durham community and those artists in this process. Yes, we will need to seek an external firm to advise the research and planning process, but we want this to be a Durham-centric process that engages all kinds of citizens, you know, both practitioners of the creative arts and folks who enjoy experiencing them in their home neighborhoods. And some questions that will come up in these discussions are really core to Durham's identity. You know, what do we value about Durham's cultural life? What is missing from our cultural landscape, and how do we keep our practitioners and organizations healthy and sustainable so they're here for us in another 20 years? And I think, Yvonne, I pass it off to you now.
Yes, next slide, please. Good morning, commissioners and council members, Madam Mayor and Chair Howerton. It's a pleasure, as always. Just want to remind you that this is a plan that will be owned by the city and the county. And the plan that was done in 2004 was actually paid for by the county using occupancy tax funds. So the contract was actually issued by the county. And I know that sometimes we we say arts and culture and we roll over that, but we want to stress that this is about the Museum of Life and Science as much as it is about the Museum of Durham History. It's about programs and activities that should be every day available to children who are in McDougall Terrace, and it's about what goes on the stage of Carolina Theater. And we know that it is significant economic impact, and what we are proposing to do is to plan for the future, to strategize in this new world. Just think in 2004, what did your cell phone look like? I'll leave it right there. Just think about the changes that we've had in our lives. So this timeline is aggressive and contingent upon when funds are awarded and available to us. These steps involved forming a group that will create a steering committee and issuing an RFP. Know that in this process, we'll be coming back to both management and elected officials to get your input around what questions and needs you feel like need to be researched or studied or addressed in this process. You do own this, and we will keep you engaged. We will expect someone from both elected bodies as well as senior management to be a part of the steering committee in some form or fashion. What's different about our roadmap plan from others around the country is that we intend to have a very robust artist and creative engagement. We need to define that, but that does mean thinking about how do we include those who create what we enjoy, from the curator at the Museum of Life and Science to the dancer, to the painter, to the filmmaker, to the author, which, as you know, we have wonderful writers and poets in our community. So that component will be different from other communities, leave it to Durham, to figure out what it's going to be. We are not proposing that those folks are put in a room and there's a focus group, but we actually want to have some kind of a very creative and engaged component. Notice the word component versus process. Around the winter time, we will launch the planning and gather. Spring will be some preliminary work, and ideally the final report and presentation coming back to the city and the county late in the summer of 23. So this is absolutely a year plus activity, as it should be for a roadmap of this size. Next slide, please. This is the draft budget, and I say draft because as volunteers, we have done a lot of research, looked at what other plans are costing, look at what other communities are paying for these. We know our plan was a couple $100,000 in 2004, so you can imagine the nature of cost and change now. But you see that the creative component, whatever that might look like, we're proposing is about 30,000. We know that the consultants would be somewhere in that 260 range. There's certainly logistics, translations, outreach, printing, flyers, well, all of those kinds of things. And the sources would be 300,000 from the city and the county. And we do intend to raise some private sector funds for those things that for whatever reason may not be appropriate to use city funds for, as well as just to extend the budget that we have. Next slide. We appreciate your attention to this. We are simply asking for 300,000 whenever you decide to give it, whether that's this fiscal year or next fiscal year. We hope that you will see value in what we're doing. And I want to just thank publicly the Cultural Advisory Board. This is your body. We were formed by both the city and the county, and we hope that the county moving forward will lean on us a little bit more and let us help you with some of the things that you may be facing, and let us take advantage of our collective expertise. There's really some very bright people on this board, and thank you, Angela, for your leadership through all of this time. At this point, we close and look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. And I would, at this time, open up for discussion. Ask our chair to lead us off in that, if you would. Good morning, Chair Howerton.
Good morning and good morning, everybody. I'm laughing because Ms. Coleman, you be careful when you ask us to lean on you. It's just, be careful when you ask that.
Well, it's our role. It's our role, and the county, frankly, has not taken advantage of our availability. So we are here.
I got you. Be careful when you ask for it. But I'm looking forward to this project and working with you. I am excited about it. And I appreciate you and your team bringing it before us. I do have one question for you. So this funding is just for the consultant to come in and create a plan. Is that accurate?
Well, it isn't just the consultant. There's costs associated with everything around it. But yes, the major part of this money would be used to pay the consultants, which we expect will be a team.
Okay, and then once the plan is put together, there will probably be another time for an infusion of resources at that point as well.
Yes, thank you for that question. Yes, there will be likely a request for funds for implementation of the kinds of things that come out of the plan. The last time we did this, we had the city and the county provided, I think it was at least a couple $100,000 to kickstart some of the things. And we also incorporated the Museum of Durham History during that time and paid for all of the legal work to get bylaws, et cetera, done. So yes, you should expect that there will be some requests for implementation, but you'll be so intimately involved in it that you will be asking yourself for the money.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. The arts in our community really are constantly saying that we don't do enough for them. And I am very committed that we show the artists in our community, the art world, that we do support them. So I don't really have a whole lot of questions around this. I've read the information that you've sent me. I've had conversations with you, and I support this 100%.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If I may, if you would, please see this as something bigger than the arts. The Museum of Life and Science is a creative organization. The library is concerned with humanities, preservation, Durham history. Okay. So this is bigger than ARTS.
Okay, got you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's all for me.
All right, we'll turn it over to our fellow committee members if you all have questions at this time. All right, Commissioner Jacobs, and followed by Commissioner County City Councilwoman Jillian Johnson. Good morning, Kylie.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for bringing this forward, Katy and Angela and Yvonne. We have heard about this already. This has been presented to our board, and I know I've had a conversation with you, Yvonne. I think this is really important, and I support this effort. 18 years is a long time, 2004. And, there's just a lot going on right now in our community. We are updating our transit plan. We're updating our land use plan. We are trying to recover from COVID. And I think that this really is the perfect time to engage in this type of a plan as well. When I think about the ecosystem for artists in our community, I think about our affordable housing challenges. We do have a lot of challenges for creative people in our community who often don't get paid a fair wage for the important work that they do. So I think this is a really important time to look at what is happening and For me personally, the arts, I feel, are the lifeblood of our community, really the soul of our community, and a really important part of what makes Durham special. And as you alluded to in your presentation, so important for how we all communicate and share stories, and also how we change people's hearts and minds. I know for me personally, that's the arts are a really important part of my life. So I look forward to this study, and the city and the county both have arts policies. As you referenced, our library, our new library is the main library now is a STEAM library. There are arts in there. So I'm excited about where this can lead us, and us revitalizing the support for all types of art in our community. Thank you so much for leading this effort. I really appreciate the leadership that each of you and so many people provide, even over these past 18 years without a lot of support. Thank you.
Councilwoman Johnson, and we welcome Mayor Pro Tem Mark Middleton to our group this morning. Good morning, Mayor Pro Tem.
Morning, ma'am. Hello, friends. Good to see y'all.
Morning. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have any questions either. I just wanted to express my support for the city partnering on this effort. I think it's really important that we update this plan. It's clearly been a long time, and it's obvious that we need some new information, some new data in order to respond effectively to what our community needs regarding the arts. And I was really disappointed when a couple of years ago when we got the series of presentations from local artists about their needs, and then weren't able to fund anything because of the pandemic. We were concerned about potential budget shortfalls related to COVID-19, and so we decided not to fund any new initiatives that year. And we have not come back to that to figure out how we can support our arts community now that the budget situation feels a little bit more stable, and we're a little bit less worried about the pandemic throwing at least our financial situation into more uncertainty. So yeah, I'm really excited about this, and definitely want this to be considered as part of our budget process. I know our city manager is here, and will take that through the next steps that are needed. So thank you, everyone, for your hard work and for your attention to this important issue for our community. I'm excited to learn more, and definitely 100% supportive of moving this forward. Thank you.
Did I miss anyone for further comments? All right, I too want to express my support. This reminds me of Durham. When I was a child growing up, I had an aunt who worked at the Regal Theater down near the Biltmore, and Durham was a stop on the Chitlin Circuit. Not only did we have Black Wall Street, but we had one of the major stops on what they call the Chitlin Circuit, where all the Black artists would come through. And I can remember the excitement when a new artist was coming through. I remember when Sam Cooke had come through, and I can remember the conversations, and I don't know if I remember when he was actually here, but I remember my aunt and my mother and all the conversations they would have about all of these artists that would come in. And so, it is the soul of our community. The arts have very much been a part of my life, and I'm excited to be a part of supporting our efforts to showcase the many and varied talents in this arena. It is definitely a part of who we are, and we've got to invest if we want them to not only survive, we want to thrive. We want to make Durham a stop again on the new circuit, whatever it's called. We want to make Durham a stop again.
It won't be Chitlins.
No, it won't be the Chitlin Circuit. But I'll tell you, I remember that. I do. So I look forward to having this conversation and taking it back. I'm so excited. I'm an artist myself at times, so I'm so excited about this. That's a great way to start the first meeting that I presided over. So thank you, Ms. Coleman and Ms. Lee and Ms. Clune for a great presentation this morning. And we look forward to going back to our boards to see what kind of movement we can get in this area. All right, so now we'll move to our third agenda item this morning, which is the Museum of History funding request. We have as our presenter this morning would be Patrick Mucklow, who is the Executive Director of the Museum of Durham History. Welcome, Mr. Mucklow, and we'll turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor ONeill. Can everyone hear me all right? Okay, great. Thank you, Mayor ONeill. Thank you, Chair Howerton, for having me this morning. Thank you to the City and Council and the County Commission for having me. I want to especially thank Councilmember Williams and Commissioner Alam for their board service, and Commissioner Alam for getting us on today's agenda so quickly. I also want to thank Chair Howerton and Councilmember Reese for their board service over the last several years. It has been extremely helpful, and really appreciate their support. On behalf of our board of directors and staff, I want to thank the council and commission for your ongoing support of the museum. Your commitment to sustaining our operations, particularly during 2020, was critical to our survival. It demonstrated to the public and to our private donors that local government values the museum's work and want to see it continue. Referring to the presentation before us, I'm heartened by the Cultural Advisory Board that the role of the museum is just as important, if not more, in the new cultural roadmap as it was in the 2004 version. As many of you know, I'm here today because the museum is looking to create an education coordinator role, which would be our third full-time position in our first since 2014, showing that we are very intentional, is a polite way of putting it, in our growth. The position is a focused one and directly support classroom initiatives and educational visits to the museum. We respectfully request that the city and county support this position with an increase of $50,000 total to our existing annual operations funding request. This would include salary and healthcare benefits for the employee. I have a PowerPoint presentation that I sent very late last night. I don't know if you want me to share my screen or if you would like to bring it up. Thank you. And before we talk about the position, I'd like to just give a little bit of background as to how we got to this point of identifying this area of need. And we can go to the next slide, please. In 2018, along with Discover Durham, we were appointed by Mayor Schul to co-chair Durham's 2019 sesquicentennial commemoration. That year, we recognized Durham's rich past, present, and promising future and celebrated our community spirit, values, and accomplishments. We saw 150 plus events held around Durham. We awarded $100,000 in community grants to 76 grant recipients and hosted a year of community curated exhibits at the museum, which all culminated in a 2-hour multimedia closing event at DPAC, for which the museum advised and developed historic content. As a result of Durham 150's success, the museum experienced a tremendous boost in our community-wide visibility. Audiences who were not previously familiar with us were now aware, thanks to legitimacy and the credibility that the Durham 150 opportunity provided us. Durham 150 fundraising efforts helped raise $167,000 toward the museum vision project, which was a cornerstone legacy goal of Durham 150, so that we could make preparations and lay the groundwork to establish a more permanent museum worthy of Durham. This set us up to take our organization to the next level and demonstrate the meaningful growth our community had invested in. And then, as we all know, 2020 happened. And we could go to the next slide, please. When we shut our doors in March of 2020, we immediately got to work making sure that we were still contributing to the cultural and educational well-being of Durham. We pivoted to digitizing our exhibits like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s trips to Durham and the centennial of women's struggle for right to vote. We also heard the calls from parents and teachers for more web-based learning resources So we've posted a series of online scavenger hunts to guide students toward digital history resources. These efforts generated over 33,000 new visitors to our website in the fiscal year 2020-2021 alone. Next slide, please. Throughout the pandemic closure, we collaborated with our partners in the humanities like the Durham Colored Library, Preservation Durham, Katy Heritage Center, the Durham County Library, the Pauli Murray Project, Duke and NCCU, just to name a few, to host a series of free webinars to help folks come together and discuss current events, participate in the conversation, or just come to listen and learn. Again, just in 2020 and 2021, nearly 6,000 viewers tuned in live, with thousands more having watched the recordings since. Next slide, please. As we adapted to the new normal, in addition to our online learning, we installed 2 new outdoor exhibits at the museum, Faces of Durham and the History of 500 West Main Street. We also dedicated a history grove at Wrightwood Park and recently installed a new marker in Central Park for Dr. John Hope Franklin History Grove to be dedicated this spring. We've also held multiple outdoor events since our reopening in April of 2021. Next slide, please. I would say probably my proudest moment in my time at the museum came last June when we welcomed Ms. Mary Clyburn Hooks and Ms. Virginia Williams to dedicate the Royal Ice Cream sign that's on display at the museum. As the 2 surviving participants of the Royal Ice Cream sit-in, their presence in the event was extremely touching. And despite what her daughter Keisha said in this quote, it is never routine for those of us at the museum. We love history and we love exploring the stories of Durham's past. And I can say that it's very humbling to be fortunate enough to be in the presence of such greatness as these 2 women last summer. Next slide, please. Behind the scenes during the pandemic closure, we began to execute our vision plan. We continued to work by fine-tuning our program study with Vine's architecture to keep our long-term plans on track. We renewed our lease with the vital help of Councilmember Reese and David Fleischer. In 2021, we conducted our annual summer teacher trainings in person, which are based on source materials that we use for exhibits to develop lesson plans. We also developed 150 Faces Traveling School exhibit with accompanying exercises with the input of history curriculum specialist Kelly Stevens and Countywide Media Center contacts and DPS. This exhibit is currently being launched in Rogershurst Middle School as we speak. Next slide, please. What we've seen over the last 2 years is an increased appreciation and interest in history and how this moment is being documented. People wanted to learn more about past public health crises and Durham's role as it rose to become the city of medicine. And people then reached out to the museum to explore what got us to where we are now as a society, especially locally as it pertains to the historic and current state of race relations. It was encouraging to see programs currently at work in the museum reflected as priorities recommended by the Racial Equity Task Force report, which, when it was delivered, could not have come at a more critical time. The museum will be an enthusiastic partner on these projects and continue to integrate these recommendations through the support of city and county entities and the greater Durham community. Next slide, please. This is small writing, so we don't have to refer to this document. Hopefully you all have a copy of the job description, but we accomplished all of this with a full-time staff of 2. But we saw this immense workload as an opportunity because it helped us identify areas of need to better serve students and teachers as a learning resource. With input from DPS stakeholders, our part-time staff, volunteers, and our board, we developed this position. As I mentioned earlier, we're looking to onboard this 3rd full-time position in our very first since 2014. Some highlights of this position would be this role would conduct programming for school groups during their visits and work with educators to schedule visits and effectively communicate the information about our content and the logistics. We would also develop new programs based on museum exhibits and current events. This person would also oversee the development and implementation of classroom resources such as the 150 Faces of Durham traveling exhibit and the related curriculum and activities and other online history education resources for our website. This person would also coordinate group visits. Many of these tasks with this role will not have to be forged alone by this person. With such a small team at the museum, we collaborate and support each other to make sure that we are serving the public and our colleagues. We respectfully request the city and county support this position with an increase of $50,000 to our annual funding operations request, and so that we can pay this person a living wage and be able to provide them with healthcare benefits. I appreciate your time and would love to hear any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Muklo. We appreciate your time this morning. I will turn to my co-chair, Commissioner Chair Howerton, to start the discussion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. You know, I miss meetings at 7:30 in the morning. It's 7:30, 8 o'clock, Patrick. Since I'm no longer on your board. But
I'd love to trade places with you at some point.
But I thoroughly enjoyed my time working with you.
Thank you, ma'am. You too.
You have on your site, you said 50,000, and you know the city and county has supported all along. So what you have here is 167,000. So what's the difference in the ask?
So the 167 that was raised from Durham 150 are restricted funds that were specifically for our vision project so that we could lay the foundation for engaging architects, attorneys, consultants to coordinate community groups purely for the intention of building a permanent facility. Those funds are not to be touched for regular annual operations.
So you're not requesting that, you're just asking for the 50,000 city and county?
I was basically tooting the horn of the Durham 150 fundraising committee for their great work, okay, and for Yvonne Coleman's extremely responsible fiscal oversight during the Durham 150 project.
Okay. Oh, thank you for that clarification. I am fine with that. We have been supporting the museum, and I think it's a necessity for our community. So I don't have a whole lot of questions. I've been privy to the conversation for quite some time, and it serves our children, and it serves our community and people that are visiting our community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll turn it over to any other questions coming. Our Commissioner along.
Thank you, Mayor ONeill. I don't have any questions. I just want to, as the liaison for the county board to the Durham Museum of History, just express my support and excitement about this position, because I think it's really great, especially the focus on our students and really creating more programming. Because I know for me, growing up, the trips to the museum were one of my favorite field trips that we would have. So having opportunities for our kids to continue to learn about the history of Durham, and also the volunteer opportunities it's going to create to make sure we continue to build historians of Durham's history. So thank you so much, Patrick, and the entire Durham History Museum Board.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments? Commissioner Jacobs, followed by Councilwoman Johnson, in that order. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Patrick, for this presentation and for bringing forward this request. I support this request personally. I think it's a very modest request, $50,000. I hope that's enough to pay somebody along with benefits. I'm really amazed how the museum has pivoted during COVID, the way that you have not stopped being a presence in our community, and with all the different things that you have been doing is really, really impressive. And with, again, the meager resources that the museum really has, I think this focus on education is really important. As we heard in the previous presentation, since 2000, Durham's population has increased 44%. That means we have a lot of people in our community that really don't know about the history of Durham. And there's also no more important group audience than our children, and for everyone to be rooted in the history of our community. And I guess one of my questions is about how it seems like part of this focus is try to leverage really the resources that the museum has. And I think it's great to bring school groups in, but obviously even I like what you're trying to do, which is to bring things directly into the schools. And if you could talk a little bit more about some of the things that you may be able to do related to supporting teachers, because I'm a former 5th grade teacher, and I'm just wondering about the alignment with our North Carolina curriculum, what opportunities there are, and also things like, the Museum of Life and Science does a lot of kits that they let teachers check out, kind of museum in a box type things. So, or even when teachers visit, kind of helping with the before and after. So if you could just talk a little bit about those types of things.
Yes, those are great questions, Commissioner Jacobs. And I'll start with the curriculum. We're not teachers at the museum, which is why we always want to work with the educators to develop whatever we think would be beneficial for them. So we work with them, and typically during our annual summer teacher workshops, we bring the raw source materials and get together with about 20 or so educators from middle school, junior high level, all the way through high school. And we say, here's what we use to put together this exhibit. And here are the key points. How can you do this so that it meets state regulations for curriculum? And they we work together to put together those lesson plans for them. I think that in terms of what we can do going forward with getting more into the schools and giving them more support, in our discussions with them, them being the educators, we have heard that web-based online learning tools are extremely helpful, so that we can develop like 150 Faces. We want to create a portal that's a secure portal in our website where students or teachers log on. The educators go to pull lesson plans for these different activities that we are developing for 150 Faces. The students would choose another path down this portal to actually go and engage in the activities. With all of the students being equipped with laptops, we were advised to develop both invest in digital technology as well as more traditional paper-based activities where the students could go to each media center where the exhibit is residing for its roughly 2 week span, and go and engage with the exhibit physically. So those are just a couple of the ways that we're trying to help with the current curriculum.
Thank you so much. Sounds very exciting.
Thank you.
Any other questions from committee members or discussion? Thank you so much. I feel like I need to call you Patrick now instead of executive director. That's okay. I want
to look over my shoulder and ask who you're talking to.
I was down at the museum over the summertime when Dr. Charles Johnson of North Carolina Central had a display up, and I really enjoy that space. And it's really cool to see the recommendations of the Racial Equity Task Force sort of come to life. So thank you for all your work, and I certainly support all of your efforts. So thank you.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, you all, we are moving right along. Our last agenda item this morning, it's the Durham Crime Cabinet, and I'm going to ask our chairperson, Brenda Howerton, our chair of our county commissioners, to start our discussion off this morning. We've had some interesting conversations in this space and thought it would be prudent that we bring it to this forum this morning. So with that being said, if you start us off, Brenda.
Sure, Madam Mayor. So the Durham Crime Cabinet, as most of you know, that was started back years ago by Howard Clement and Ellen Reckow, and it was very effective up until Commissioner Reckow retired, and it's been kind of stagnant since that time. So we looked to have a conversation about whether or not we need to continue it or discontinue it. So one of the things that I had the staff do was reach out to all the members that have been serving on the committee. And the majority of the individuals that have been serving overwhelmingly said that they would like for it to continue. So in that event, what I sent the mayor an email to say, for us to start looking at what date, and we wanted to have a conversation with this committee to get your input as to what you think and how you see that this need to continue, or what do you think it does not need to continue. One of the things that the information that we received was this committee serves as an area for input from community members that around the justice system, around the court systems that don't show up for meetings in any of our other groups. So that's kind of the information that I'd have, and I'd like to turn it over to you for conversations around it.
Any discussion, anybody? Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you. I just would like to hear a little bit more, just noting, I understand there were members. I don't know how members were identified. It's great to hear that the members are still interested in serving. And of course, what the mission, I guess, of the committee would be.
You know, I didn't go back and find out the mission of it. I did not do that. I just wanted to, my instructions to staff was whether or not people were still interested in participating. And what they received back was, yes, they would like to continue to participate. If there's more information that you need, we can ask staff to go back and get that, but that was not part of the conversation that I had with staff.
I was a part of it when it was originally implemented under the leadership of Commissioner Reckow at that time. You know, that was many years back, but at that time, it was basically a lot of your stakeholders in the criminal justice arena, your courts, your district attorney, your police chiefs, your sheriffs. All of us sat around the table with interested community leaders, and we really came up with improvements to the systems and interaction. For example, the pre-trial detention, all of that came out of that initiative, out of that group. I remember that we were having discussions about security needs for our new, at that time, new jail. That was a part of a crime cabinet discussion. You had a lot of people in neighborhoods. We had members of our PACs who were there regularly. I think some of the court watch participants were around the table. So what it did as a judge at that time was to provide an opportunity for us to interact at a different kind of level. because normally we are not allowed, we were not allowed to interact with the public like that, and with, you know, the sheriff and the police department because of that unique role. But that allowed for us to have full community conversations about, you know, crime stats, what we could do, what we were seeing, we were allowed to share. So it was a robust and full committee that was really instrumental in some of the things that you're seeing today. And I know Gudrun is on here as well, and she can provide some insights. I think that she was a part of that original kind of group as well. But yeah, a lot of things came out of that.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And the other thing was the facilitators invited, they had speakers at every meeting. There was always different speakers, presenters presenting some issue that needed to be addressed in our community. Gudrun is on the call.
Yes, if you want, could you share a bit to expound upon an answer to Councilwoman Freeman's question, Gudrun?
Gladly. Good morning, commissioners. Good morning, City Council, Madam Mayor, Madam Chair. The crime cabinet existed when I came to Durham in 1998, and over the years actually was instrumental in standing up a number of programs. As the mayor remembered, the pretrial services came out of the crime cabinet. And the crime cabinet often created subcommittees or ad hoc committees to address a certain topic. There was a lot of advocacy through the crime cabinet to the state legislature often on some issues, but there were a lot of statistics, as the mayor said. It was always all your criminal justice, that the heads of the criminal justice agencies, police chief, the sheriff was there, and the district attorney. Depending on the topics, our chief judge would be able to attend, or sometimes not. And then we had the PACs represented, and a number. There's a whole list of the membership: adult probation, criminal justice. All your law enforcement agencies were represented on crime cabinet, city council, county commission. And then Durham Businesses Against Crime had representation, so a number of groups. And yeah, sometimes it was advocacy, sometimes it was just looking into some of the topics and asking more information and asking some of those hard questions. And then it was also during budget times, there might be some advocacy for, some of the programming, but lots of information that came to the council, to the cabinet, sorry.
Thank you so much. I see Commissioner Burns has her hand raised as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to both you as well as Chair Howerton for bringing this timely conversation. I thank you for providing us some history about the effectiveness and about how the community felt about these meetings. Gudrun, thank you for also adding some additional context as to the purpose of the committee. I want to go back to something that Chair Howerton said, because I'll be honest, I'm just a bit confused. She said that, this was started between the city and the county, and it was started and it went stagnant after Ellen Redcow left. Ellen Redcow has not served as a county commissioner since December 7th, 2020. And I think we could all, or at least the majority of us, if we're being honest, could agree that between today's date and December 7th, 2020, we have seen some record-breaking numbers as it pertains to crime in Durham, whether it be gang violence, whether it be murder, whether it be sexual assault. So I'm trying to understand, and if somebody could provide to me why we've seen this stagnation, especially when, based on what I've heard from Mayor ONeill and what I've heard from Gudrun, that this committee should have been meeting the entire time. And I provide this context. There are often things that my commission members know about that I don't know about in the community, and vice versa. And so when we have conversations, we have our private conversations, you know, there are things that I might not know that are going on, and and then when I tell them what is going on, they have no foundation for it. And that doesn't mean that they're not paying attention and they don't care. We live very different lives. And I think if we did have this cabinet meeting, we can at least get everybody on the same baseline foundation about what goes on with our children, about the shootings that we see, about the murders that keep many of us up at night. So I'm just trying to understand that. And I'm not trying to place the blame because everybody gets busy, but did it meet monthly? Did it meet bi-monthly? Who was the chair? And why has that person not been meeting? And I know I'm the alternate. Those are the answers that I honestly want.
I think our chair can give some, shed some light on that, since I was not a part of that part of it. Chair Howard.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You just got here. It's fine.
Right.
Okay, so thank you, Madam Mayor. And Commissioner Burns, you're right. We have not put the emphasis on this that it needed. It was everything else seemed to, with the pandemic, that just kind of took priority over some other things that we should have been paying a lot more attention to. And we didn't have a chair for the county. Councilman Reese was still the co-chair of that committee, and we kept going around and around with it to bring it to this committee to be able to make a decision about it. So it's no blame on anyone. It's just that we just didn't make it a priority. And now we wanted to make a decision about, do we make it a priority? And I was just looking at one of the meetings that Commissioner Reckow had, and it said the objectives are encourage interagency collaboration, promote new initiatives, monitor crime rate annually, advocate for Durham, Pacific, and statewide public safety issues, endorse and support funding for new initiatives. Those were the objectives, some of the objectives that were happening. But I just want you to know that there's no fault on either the city or the county. It's just that it wasn't a priority for any of us at that point. At that point, it was more of us keeping our community safe and well. And this is a part of it. We just didn't do it. So now it's time to either do it or not.
Well, quick follow-up to that. I can completely respect all of that, but that we're saying I feel discouraged saying priority, because we, even last year, we were a year and a half into the pandemic and babies in Durham were dying. And I don't mean to sensationalize that, but that is just a fact, right? And so I'm a little bit discouraged. And I know people are like, well, now maybe you should have stepped up. Honestly, I thought the Crown Cabinet was meeting. So that's not to assign any blame. I don't have a vote because I'm an alternate, but I do want to lift up my voice and say, one, I would love to know when the last meeting was and see the minutes. And we don't have to do that now because I'm perfectly capable of doing a public records request on my own. But if I did have a vote today, I would say I wholeheartedly agree, because I think after a year of not being seen, I think our community deserves to be seen. And I'll hold my comments and give the floor to everybody else to see what they have to say.
I did want to ask our city manager, who has been with us forever and ever and ever and ever in different roles, to see if she wanted to weigh in on her interactions with this committee, to just kind of give us some input from the city manager's perspective as to the historical perspective, because you were probably around when it first started, and so you've seen it. You've probably been one of the few on this call that was at the beginning and all the way through from inside City Hall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good morning to everyone. I will not have many words because while I have been around city government for a long time, I was not part of this structure here. But I do know that I have participated in the crime cabinet meetings in the absence of the former city manager, retired city manager, Tom Bonfield. The managers served as administrative staff like we are here when elected officials are leading or convening meetings to make sure that follow-up items took place. If there were action items that were required as a result of the meeting, I was certainly aware that the manager had a seat there to listen and to implement and to try to collaborate and coordinate ideas that came from the crime cabinet. And when the city manager could not be present, then one of the deputy city managers on both the county and the city side would be present. What I would say is that the meetings were regular for a very long time, and I don't have anything to add at this point about the cancellation or the structure around whether or not meetings were required or anything of that nature at this time. But thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, city manager. I think that we met initially. It might have been a monthly meeting. Initially, I believe, when we were meeting, and there were times, of course, when people could not make it because of various commitments. But I want to say that we had that was one of the driving forces like I said, a lot of the systemic kind of changes that you saw, especially in that pretrial prevention space, pretrial services space. And those meetings were attended regularly by most folk. It was one of those, there are a lot of people, and we have a lot of meetings where people meet to meet. This was not that kind of meeting. This was definitely an action-oriented meeting. And I know that a lot of great things came out of those meetings. So I am looking forward to pulling this group back together again in this capacity, if that will be the will of the bodies. But I can't think of a more important group, especially like Commissioner Burns said, at this particular time. I think it will be helpful to bring us all back to the table again and begin to be in a more of a proactive mode. I think this provides some proactivity within this group. So I see our Mayor Pro Tem has raised his hand, and I'll turn it over to you for your comments, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. And again, good morning, friends. I was actually part of the crime cabinet. I was a council's alternate and actually got to chair the meeting sometimes in conjunction with Commissioner Reccal when Councilmember Reese wasn't there. Just a little bit of historical perspective. The phrase went stagnant. It's a bit of a curious characterization because actually when Commissioner Reccal announced her retirement, there was some who saw that as an opportunity to actually rethink it. And for some, it was going to stop by design, not because loss of a particular personality or loss of interest. I remember the debate about the phasing out of it. There were some who thought that the natural evolution should be more focused on the Wellness and Safety Task Force as opposed to the crime cabinet. So this wasn't just about people losing interest. For some, it was by design that they thought that this was no longer where we should be focusing. With that said, everything that's been said about receiving presentation, I learned a lot about some of the things that departments were doing. For example, the police when they initiated the this I forget the name of it, forgive me, but the specialized intervention for domestic violence situations and follow up. Learned that at the crime cabinet. There was a lot of oftentimes community members who came and voiced their concerns and offered ideas. I think that as compelling a case can be made for the crime cabinet as we can make for the Recovery and Renewal Task Force. And that hinges upon, has the problem that was trying to address still present? The pandemic is still present, and we know we still have a violent crime issue. So I think a case can be made for either one. With that said, I don't think that it should be viewed as mutually exclusive, having the crime cabinet and the Wellness and Safety Task Force at work simultaneously. But I do want to, just because I was there, for the sake of historical clarity, the notion that it just went stagnant, maybe for some folk, but for other folk, this was a conscious decision and using Commissioner Reckow's retirement as a time to rethink our approach as a community and as a city to violent crime. With that, Madam Mayor, if it's the will of the body, or I don't know if this is appropriate in this context, but if it were to be reignited, I didn't get long to serve on it because it was being, as Commissioner Reckow was being retiring. But I'd certainly be willing to work again as a liaison for that body, with no violence being done to any other bodies or initiatives working in our public space towards the issue. So I just wanted to provide that historical clarity. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, let me ask you this. Madam Mayor, is Charlie no longer serving in that role? Because he was in that role, and a couple of times he postponed the meeting that we were supposed to have together to bring it before this body. Is he no longer serving in that role?
I think, as Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, we've had brief conversations about it, and I think there was a point where we were trying to flesh out whether we were going to have a Durham crime cabinet in that form, and how that was going to interact with the new Community Safety and Wellness Task Force. I think that membership was also being developed. So I'm pretty sure that he will be willing to come back and serve in whatever capacity is needed. But I think we were at this kind of interim period trying to decide what that group was going to do and how to reignite the Durham crime cabinet. So I guess my question would be, and I know that Commissioner Jacobs has her hand raised as well, is if we could talk about what the membership of the Community Safety and Wellness Task Force, because I do think that is more of a communities kind of centered task force, and the Durham crime cabinet is more of your stakeholders. Would that be a fair representation of the two respective bodies, so that we know that I don't think there's overlap in membership?
Yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And ma'am, if I might, to Chair Howerton's point, when there was no inability of us to still use calendars. I mean, everybody who was called to those meetings, we could have still come to meetings, and there was a conscious decision to kind of a self-imposed limbo, precisely to decide whether there was, simpatico relationship between the crime cabinet and the Wellness Safety Task Force. Was it even still necessary? So all of the people that were involved were more than capable of still coming to meetings, and many expressed their willingness to come to meetings. But this wasn't just kind of atrophy because we had lost a leader who galvanized us. This was, conscious actors kind of making decisions about this. And I guess this is the time to revisit it deliberately.
So the structure, and I know that Commissioner Jacobs wants to speak. The structure of that meeting was the mayor and the city and the county manager would attend, and the council person and the commissioners would facilitate the meeting. Madam Mayor, I'm just thinking that for a first meeting, that it might serve for the mayor and the chair to facilitate that first meeting to get it started, and then see who wants to take it over. Just to have a conversation with the community, because they are not party to this conversation.
Right.
And so just to throw that out.
Okay.
I think that's a great idea, Chair Howerton.
Commissioner Jacobs, if you want to weigh in, I believe you had your hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I may have attended one crime cabinet meeting, so I was not a part of the crime cabinet. But I want to raise the issue that we in Durham are very good at having a lot of different committees and groups around this issue. So we've got our gang reduction task force, we have the violent crime roundtable, now the community wellness and safety task force, we have the juvenile crime prevention council, criminal justice advisory committee, stepping up initiative, school justice partnership. There's also a pretrial release group. And I make that point just to say that I do think it is a great opportunity with anytime you take a break with something to really step back and look at what can this group serve, or what purpose can it serve that none of the other groups are serving. And one thing I have heard, I heard Chair Howerton talk about this being one place where, that there are a lot of different stakeholders that aren't in other conversations, and also members of the community. So I do think I would love to hear about, because again, in Durham, we're very good at having committees. And sometimes I'm in a lot of these conversations myself. And it does get frustrating that, the communication can be all over the place. So I do hope that the crime cabinet, it can really be something that other things aren't, or I don't know what the answer is. I'm just trying to raise the issue that I hope that we'll look at what is not being served in the other places, or what's missing, and what is this new opportunity with the crime cabinet. And maybe it even needs a new name. I don't know. But anyway, I just want to raise the issue that we're having a lot of conversations around this problem in our community. And I hope that this can be a new opportunity. That's all. Thank you.
And I appreciate that, Commissioner Jacobs, because and Chair Howerton and I have had similar conversations, and we're being very intentional and deliberate about looking at that. We've had those conversations with some of I think at one of the last meetings that we had, and we were provided a document from Commissioner Wallace that kind of just showed the historical perspective and of people who have been in different spaces, and sort of the sometimes overlap. And I think it behooves all governmental entities to kind of take a look and make sure that what we're doing is still relevant. And that is one of the things that Chair Howerton and I have started with this process, to make sure that not only what we're trying to do as jointly is relevant, but that it provides a space for players who may not be able to be at other tables. This is one, though, that I have full faith and credit that we need this one. I'm not sure what that form looks like anymore, and how we integrate with the other task force, but I do know that this one provides a unique opportunity for stakeholders as well as community members who are active in that space to come together and have conversations that are normally not here. That's been my experience. And And so, and we see the results of that. We would not have a pre-trial of the Community Justice Resource Center or any of that. All of that came, I believe, from if my memory serves me correct, out of that Durham Crime Cabinet space. It was a unique space. And I think that we can recreate that, but the 2022 model. And I think it's very important that we try to do that, especially in the time of COVID, with this new overlay of COVID, to bring these particular stakeholders back to the table with this new element. Now, Commissioner Burns, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, Madam Mayor, and I will be relatively quick. I can appreciate everything that Commissioner Jacobs said. I think for me, I hate being duplicative. I hate, especially when we have multiple task force. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Commissioner Jacobs, you mentioned like 7. If I'm not mistaken, it was like 7 in there, and I could be wrong. But to be clear, and they all exist. I wish somebody would have given that list when we developed some of these other commissions last year, because it would have been 4 or 5. But that argument was not made. The argument was not made to not make the wellness task force. The argument was not saying, well, we got 6 things, we don't need something else. So that argument could have been made then. And that's not to say that we don't need some of these committees, because I listened to what Commissioner Howerton said when she read out the mission statement on the document that she has in front that outlined what the purpose was. And Commissioner Howerton, I would ask that you would share that with all of us, or if somebody has the breakdown, we can share that breakdown with everybody so that we can at least look at it and look at some of the players. And that doesn't mean that we can't have some of the same people share on these committees. I think the most compelling argument was made by Councilman Mark Anthony Middleton. It's disturbing, but we all know that there are people who seek to destroy, which helps one group of people in Durham, so that they can elevate other people in Durham. I heard what you said, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. What I would argue, and I want to take this time because we haven't done it, Madam Mayor, I just want to say thank you to you, because as much outside of a few isolated incidences, there is something to be said about having, and this is not to take away from anybody here, because we all have our areas of expertise. To be somewhat, not even somewhat, you are a subject matter expert in this area, and you have made a compelling argument about the successes that you all have had. I think it's fair that we all take, not what she says with a grain of salt, but we take it to account, especially since outside of a few isolated incidents, before she was even elected, she was able to broker a ceasefire, one that is currently still going on. We have her to thank for that. We don't have, and when the crime cabinet wasn't meeting, it was she, along with some very strategically thought out stakeholders, that brought individuals to the table. There's no commission, there's no task force, there's nobody that did that. That was people in the community, led by people like our current mayor and other individual stakeholders that people take very seriously. So that is not to take away from any of the committees. And again, I've compared, I'm sitting here now looking at some of the bylaws and the missions, and they don't overlap. So that these, again, don't have to be, don't think to have one and not have the other. They're not mutually exclusive. I think the other argument that the mayor made was, she says, this one is more community focused, and we do need that. And people, the Wellness and Safety Task Force, I have observed, allows people to do and say things in a safer space. And I can respect that, because I want people to be able to advocate in an organic way and not be worried about what is repeated. But it is something to be said about stakeholders getting this information. I am called to the carpet all the time at my own body to give explanations about, what the Safety and Wellness Task Force did, to share PowerPoints respectfully to anybody who serves on a lot of these other committees. I don't get emails from you all about gang reduction. I don't get emails from you. I have to call, over to those stakeholders. I don't get, I serve on JCPC when grants are open. I do my best. So I also think, even though we have all these committees, it is quite clear that flow of information is not happening. And that is not to point anyone out. Maybe I should have asked the questions or demanded the questions, but I think we have gone long enough saying why we don't need this committee. I think from Councilman Mark Anthony Middleton's testimony, it's clear that people sought to destroy it, and in destroying it, what has happened? We have middle school students in the streets.
So I will stop there. Again, I don't have a vote. Those are my 2 cents. But in the event you all do decide to move forward with this, I think it would show our community that we are laser focused on looking at the big data and trying to solve these problems for them that they cannot currently solve for themselves.
Thank you, Commissioner Burns. Is there any further discussion? Right. Hearing none. Chair Howerton, you have any final remarks? I'll have to ask you what the process, I think you sort of laid out, is that you and I would host, preside over an initial first meeting, and we will go from there to figure out what the new Durham Crime Cabinet, may be a name change. Not really, you know, I'm fine with that as well. But I absolutely do think in this season where we are now, we have a very short window in which to begin to continue to broker agreements with those who have an hierarchy in the streets. And as Commissioner Burns has indicated, it has taken a lot of hard work from a lot of people to get us to this point, and they are ready for us to move forward. One of the things that has happened is we have been able to talk to what I call shot callers in the streets to help to quiet Durham. And if you have noticed, it was relatively quiet from January 2nd to just last week, I believe. And a lot of the things that have happened since we started these conversations back in the fall, a lot of the situations have not been gang related. All right, they've been situational, but not gang related, because our shot callers have had folk in the streets to calm down, but they are waiting now for us to help them. So we do have a unique opportunity that I've not seen before to get some things really done at the street level. And they're doing their part, and we have to do our part. So that's why I'm really interested in being able to provide a seat at the table for them, right? Because we do not have a body that I am aware of now that will allow for those folk that have been helping us to quiet the streets to interact in spaces that we've created, where our county commissioner has sat with them. She sat with them last week, where our chief of police, our sheriff's department, our chief district court judge, they've been seated at tables with that group. But it is now time for us to put them at the table in a body that is sanctioned by both the city and the county. And I believe that this may be the space where we can bring them in and be able to be a part of solutions in a real way. So that's one of the reasons why I'm interested in putting this particular committee back together again and reconstitute it to allow for those folk who we always talk about and try to get them to do the things that we want to do. But it's like somebody said, you can't ask them to lay down their guns and you don't have anything to put in their hands where they can feed their families. Now they are ready to talk with us, and we need to make sure that we recognize the power that they have, that we do not have. And we need to bring them in this body, I believe, to help to formulate solutions that will be long reaching and can actually get down to the surface level with some of our systemic issues that we've been dealing here in Durham. So that's what I'm looking for, a seat for them to be at this table.
So Madam Mayor, normally what the date that the meetings were held was always on a Friday. And they were held at 12 to 1:30 or 2. And if that's agreeable, we would need the time to send out emails and get people back to a meeting, give them a date, time, and have staff work with us to put that together. And even invite someone to be speakers at this meeting, and started off with a conversation from the members that are going to be part of the group, so that we can get some foundation about what it needs to look like, get their input. That's my thinking on it, because they haven't been a part of it. They haven't been a part of this conversation. And they need to have some input, especially the PACs.
I would agree. I see Councilwoman Freeman's hand is raised.
Okay.
Thank you. I apologize. I had to move to my mobile for a 2-hour delay with the kids at school. But I do want to thank Mayor ONeill and Chair Howerton for bringing this forward. I can appreciate the conversation, and I do hear the feedback that we're getting. And I think based on what I'm hearing, it sounds like we're in a good space to move forward. I do know that there are plenty of folks who would love to speak on this issue, as gun violence has been an issue in our city for a long time. And if these meetings had been occurring, I think we could have gotten to this point a little bit quicker. So I do feel like this is a good way forward, and as supportive as I can be, I will be, and making sure that that the folks who need to be around the table are around the table. And I would also say that there's a lot to be said, and I apologize, I'm in my car, a lot to be said about the work that Mayor ONeill has been trying to do to keep the ceasefire in place. And I don't think it's been said enough. I know Commissioner Burns made mention, and she elaborated quite a bit, but I don't think it's been said enough of also how our Chief Justice and our Sheriff and a number of folks in this community have been really trying to hang on to these young men in the streets and try to keep them focused on something else. So I do want to say that this space may be a part of it, but that's just the beginning, and that there's a lot more that needs to come out of it. And so I would hope that our council and county commissioners would be supportive all the way through. And that's all. Thank you.
I believe Mayor Pro Tem, did you have your hand raised and I may have missed it?
No, ma'am. Sorry.
All right. Are there any other comments on this arena? So Chair Howerton, if you and I could go over and see the list of members. But what I do want to make sure that we do is that we try to be very intentional about including folk who have not traditionally been at the table, in making sure that they're a part from the very beginning. So I would need to touch bases with Judge Evans and our sheriff. They pretty much have a lot of more contact than I do with a lot of these young men. I'm able to call some of them, and I will touch bases with the ones that I know to make sure that we let them know that there will be a seat provided from the beginning, because a lot of times we will bring them on after. And I want to make sure that whatever we start again will be at a time that's convenient. You know, most of the time that we meet with them after hours. And also, I know that most of the time our judges break from 1 to 2:30. At least that was the traditional time for lunch. So I just want to make sure that we check and make sure that everyone will be available at that time, especially those who've never been a part of conversations like this. And if you would, just to kind of sum it up, to give some context for what you saw with these young men. We only had 3 that night, I believe. If you could just give a little bit of overview of that. And Councilwoman Freeman has also been at that seat, but just to kind of tell you all what we've been doing The revolution will not be televised. These are things that happen behind closed doors, not in secrecy, but that allow for free-flowing conversations that have never been had before. I've been waiting over 20 some years for this moment, and I'm not the only one. And it is now upon us, and it will behoove us to be very intentional in including those who are closest to the pain to be closest to the power. So if you would just kind of share, and then we'll ask Councilwoman Freeman to give a little overview of what she's seen, and then we'll close out.
You know, what I left there with was, you know, the presence of young men that wanted what everybody else wants. They want to be able to take care of their families. They want to be seen, that they matter. You know, they talked about stopping doing some of the things that they're doing, not selling drugs, not, you know, putting down their guns. They talked about being willing to give up something to get what they want. And it was really painful to listen to. These are people in our community, and their sense of how we appreciate them. It's really sad. It's sad to listen to, because they don't think we care. And they don't think it because it doesn't look like we do. So I left there with a very, very heavy heart to know that this community, as rich as it is, that we've got young men and kids growing up, because this young man had his child with him, and they don't even have, and they can't get a house to live in. They can't get talk about affordable housing all the time, and they can't get a home to live in. And that's sad. That's sad for us as leaders to say that that's what we are representing. So yeah, I left there pretty heavy.
Councilwoman Freeman, I'm gonna let you have the last word on, she has been in a couple of those meetings as well. Want to leave you with some final thoughts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you. I want to hold that space. I think that Commissioner Howerton said it best, and just acknowledging how heavy leaving those conversations as a leader in this community has felt. I definitely, you know, when you hear stories and you see the news, or you are impacted like indirectly, it's very different. And just to know that there are so many folks who would be willing to bring 40 or 50 with them if there were jobs, if there were housing opportunities, and if there were education opportunities, is heartbreaking, because that's what you want for your children. That's what you want for your neighbor. That's what you want in our community. And then as we're talking about solving these problems and having these conversations, it's really like just down to like the basics. And so if I don't have diapers and if I don't have milk, I'm gonna do what I need to do. And it's real plain. I just want to say that I'm grateful that they've been as open as they've been. There's a lot I won't say, but I know that the violence that we've been seeing is not like anything in these last few weeks. And the very nature of how folks are involved with the business that they're in, and I do call it a business because they are putting pen to paper, and they've got plans, and they've got all, yeah. I just want to say that we have an opportunity. We have a very clear opportunity to have impact in a way for our youth and our community in a very direct way as leaders. And I want to make sure that we take it full advantage. And that's about it. So thank you.
Thank you all. I'm just going to end on this as we get ready to adjourn to give you food for thought. I went to our nation's capital a couple of weeks ago to attend the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And that was a 4-day conference, and we had mayors from all over the United States, from the big cities to the small cities, and I learned a lot. We had several seminars on this issue because crime, the increase in crime is unfortunately common. That was a common thread from the little cities to the great big cities. And there were panels of mayors and discussions around what people were doing. But the one thing that struck me was that in those conversations and panels that I attended, no one is doing what we're doing. No one. I heard, now they may be doing it, but I heard not one conversation where you had your sheriff, your police, your county commissioner, your mayor, your council people, sitting at the table, brokering a ceasefire with gang members from different gangs. Didn't see it. I was looking for it. I didn't see it. So we are now in the process of making what has been invisible, visible. These are young men, and a lot of them I have known for years, and a lot of them I'm learning, who want what we want, a chance at the American dream. And it's within our powers to help realize that for some of them. But we've got to go back to the basics. Housing is first. And that F, as one told me on yesterday, that F makes that so difficult that they can't find any place to live at all. So we have some realities to think about. And the second of that is that F also precludes employment. Like one of the police officers say, if you don't provide an opportunity for me to get it, this is what the street said, we'll get it in the mud. We'll get it in the mud. I believe that Durham is better than that. I believe that we're losing a lot of talent to the streets, and we're definitely burying our babies. And I don't want another body to drop in these streets. And we can change that dynamic. But we're gonna have to be innovative as leaders. I've taken full responsibility for my part, but there is a whole class of people out there who have not been able to come out after they paid their debt to society through the criminal justice system. They have still not been able to leave that behind. So they're stuck in a caste system, and we have to do better. So I ask for you all to be innovative and think about what we're going to do to make sure that those young men who we don't even count in the census, they're not going to let you count them. We don't count them that way. They are invisible. We don't consider them to be homeless, but they are the largest homeless population in Durham, North Carolina. I guarantee you that. They are. And they are nowhere on anybody's radar unless you see them on a TV screen being arrested for making a living in an underground economy. Now, that's the reality of it. And I say that we have a unique opportunity to do something about it. But if we are not willing to make visible the invisible and see them not as UFOs that they've just somehow landed in our midst, but we can be creative and help them to be a part of a society that welcomes them without their guns and provide them with the means to do so. So to make a living and have a place to stay. So I thank you for your time this morning. I have enjoyed presiding. I hope that I did well. My teacher, Diana, I hope I did okay. And if nothing else is being said, please go with peace. And please remember those who do not have what we have and try to let us make sure that they have. So we will meet again.
And Mayor, I just want to let the group know that I will send you some dates and times.
Okay.
And then you can identify your staff person and the interim manager's staff person for the county, and we will get the invitation sent out for the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. We'll meet again as this body on Tuesday, April the 12th, 2020, and that will be hosted by our Chair, Howerton. And with that being said, we will now adjourn our meeting early. We're set aside for 2 hours, but we're adjourning at 10:39 a.m. Make it a great day, everybody.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.